The subject of this unit is Rome. Rome is a civilization that lasted for about 1,000 years. They had a great influence on the people who created the United States of America, so there are a lot of institutions in our government that can be traced back to ancient Rome, so it's a very important subject of study. What I did for this lecture is I put down right here, and this is a list I encourage you to put in your notes, a list of words, people, groups of people, and locations that I want you to know. What I'd do if I were you is write down this list, and then as the lecture continues, fill in what these different things are so that you've got a good handle on what they are and why they're important. And we'll start at the top. We'll start with Rome. Rome is a city in west central Italy. It's right there, and Rome is going to be the heart of the Roman Empire once the Roman Empire is created. What you're looking at right here is a map of the different Italian peoples before Rome became a big player. So before Rome becomes, this big bad daddy of them all, the Romans are just one group, and there are other Italians as well. There are the Etruscans. There are the Greeks who came over here, who colonized, remember our ancient Greek friends. There are a bunch of different people in Italy around 500 BCE, that's before Rome comes up and becomes a big thing. There are a number of different people here, and it's not immediately obvious that Rome is going to be the one that wins the battle royale and conquers all of Italy. That's not obvious at first. In fact, at first, the people who dominate the Italian peninsula here aren't the Romans or the Latins. This is the sort of the people, the name for the group of people in that area. But it's the Etruscans. These are the northern Italian people who dominate the Italian peninsula before Rome. And here's a picture of a lovely Etruscan right here for your enjoyment. So we've already covered a couple of these words here. You had Rome, that's the future capital of Rome, the place where they all start. The Latins, that's the group of Italians from that Roman area. And the Etruscans, they're the northern Italian people who dominate the peninsula before the Romans. You also saw Sicily on that map. Sicily is this island right here. That's, again, just an important geographic thing to know, that Sicily is the island right there off the southern coast of Italy. So at the beginning, the Etruscans dominate, these guys right here. The Etruscan kings rule this area, but the Romans rise up and overthrow the Etruscans, and the Romans become their own leaders. And the legend or whatever is that when the Romans threw off the Etruscans, they decided they were never going to have a king again. So instead of having a king, they set up a republic. A republic is a type of government. It's a type of government in which the people, through their elected representatives, hold power. So it's not a dictatorship. It's not a monarchy. It's not exactly like especially sort of a direct democracy, because the people don't rule themselves. It's the elected representatives that rule. But it is kind of a democracy. It's a republic. This is what the Romans set up after they overthrew the Etruscans. Now, before I start telling you about their republic, I've got to tell you about their society. Their society was set up broadly into two kinds of people. I'm not counting slaves here. They did have a number of slaves. The two groups were the patricians, those are your rich people, and your plebeians. Those are the sort of regular / poor people. In Rome, both these groups could vote, but only the patricians can be elected to the Senate. A little bit later on in Roman history, they'll set up an assembly where these guys can be elected as well. But broadly, sort of power is reserved for these guys, but these guys are allowed to vote for, your favorite rich person. A lot of Roman history is going to be characterized by tension between the patricians and the plebeians, tension between the rich and the poor. So if we jump back to our list, we've covered Rome, Latins, Etruscans, Sicily. I've given you your patricians and your plebeian. We've given you what a republic is, and that Rome had a republic. The Roman Senate, we've discussed briefly in our DBQ. Here's that picture from the DBQ right here. The Roman Senate was the legislative body of Rome that was 300, had to be rich to be in it, but you were elected to the office. Now, the Roman government was much more complicated than just having the Senate. I'm not going to make you know this graph, but I just sort of want to show you this map of the Roman government just to show you sort of how complicated it was. It was really complicated. Essentially, they had executives just like us. They had the legislative bodies just like we did. This I would like you to know. This is a sort of more simplified version of it. Essentially, you had your executive. This would be the equivalent of the sort of like the president. They had two consuls, but whatever. Essentially, this is your president over here. And then they had the Senate where the rich people would serve and would, make laws. And then they also had the assemblies. That was where your sort of more regular folks could be representatives. So their three branches, a little bit different than ours, but when we were setting ours up, we looked to this model, and this was sort of explicitly what we based our own on. So the Romans have a republic. They're very proud of that. They don't have a king. People have a say. People have votes. They go in the Senate over here and they argue about different laws. Now that I've given you their government, I want to just give you a tiny little bit of their history. And this is going to be our final three words: Carthage, Hannibal, and the Alps. Carthage is an empire that Rome is going to beat. Hannibal is a leader of that empire, and the Alps are a mountain range that'll matter in the fight. So Rome is coming up. Rome is going to conquer the Italian peninsula. They're going to beat the Etruscans. They're going to conquer the Etruscans. They're going to conquer Sicily. So Rome is coming up. Rome conquers all this sort of orangey brown sort of area. And while they're coming up, Carthage, which is down here in northern Africa, they're an empire that already exists. They're a little bit older, and they control, as you can see, northern Africa, and they have territory in Spain. So Carthage is already here. Rome is expanding. As you can see, they start getting all close to one another. And so what's this going to lead to? It leads to a fight. The two places fight in a number of wars, and they're called the Punic Wars, but you don't have to know that for right now. Just know that they're Carthage, and Hannibal is their most famous general. Hannibal is this brilliant strategist. You see him here on the elephant. Hannibal is facing Rome, and he knows that he can't attack Rome like that because Rome has their defenses over here are too good. But he knows that Roman defenses up in the north aren't so good because up here there are the Alps. That was the other word I wanted you to know. The Alps are mountains. So Rome knows that they have these big, big, big mountains up in the north, so they don't have a great deal of protection up there because they say, whatever, the mountains are our protection. Just to give you a sense of what the mountains are like, they're like that, okay? So those are the Alps. So the mountains are really, really good protection, so they don't have a ton of protection up there. So what Hannibal does is he says, aha, I'll sneak attack them, and he comes around this way. He comes around this way with a bunch of, war elephants and stuff, brings the elephants through the mountains, and that's this very, very famous thing that he's known for. Here's Hannibal crossing the Alps. And Hannibal crossing the Alps with his elephants is this sort of big, famous, strategic decision that, a number of elephants die. You can see one right there. A number of elephants die in the crossing. A number of his soldiers die, but not all of them. Some make it through. And when they do make it through, the Romans are never expecting it. Boom, now you have war elephants coming in here through the north. They're like, what? What's going on? He's attacking us through the north. And he comes down and he, wreaks some havoc up and down Rome for a while. Now, eventually Rome attacks down here and they draw him out and Hannibal loses. But it's this sort of brilliant thing that he's known for. However, again, in the end, he does lose. Rome wins, and Rome just annihilates Carthage and ends up taking it over. So what I need you to know from today is that Rome rises up, conquers all of Italy, sets up a republic, this sort of unique, interesting form of government that we're kind of like today. Their society is very divided between the rich and the poor. Their first major challenge is fighting this northern African empire of Carthage, and Rome wins. They beat them despite the brilliance of Hannibal crossing these Alps over here. The Romans win, and we'll learn more about what they do after that tomorrow.